My guest here today is Shelby Sapp. She is a dynamic leader renowned for exceptional talent in hiring and training salespeople like you. She's established her own sales academy called She Sells.
My mom sat me down before I went to do door-to-door sales, and she was like, I will give you $1,000 cash if you don't go out for the summer. I want to prove to all of these guys that girls could do even better. You essentially can't tell somebody that they have a problem. They just don't believe you. They're here right now, and it's painful because of this. They want to be here, and you need them to actually verbalize that there's a difference between that. I broke the full call into thirds. You test, and then you have to sell a full call to one of our coaches. If you're selling to women, you can see if they have a wedding ring on. You can build some good rapport. Oh my gosh, your wedding ring's so beautiful. He did so well. Does your husband know you're on the call?
If you're a sales professional, if you're a coach, you're a consultant, you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, it doesn't matter even if you are a dentist who's selling veneers to your patients. You want to tune in to this episode because we're going to talk about all things selling. We're going to talk about pre-framing, framing, objection prevention, closing techniques that can help you sell more your products, your services, and things. Now, my guest here today is Shelby Sapp. She is a dynamic leader renowned for exceptional talent in hiring and training salespeople like you. Her journey began in door-to-door sales 4 years ago, selling pest control. That's where my journey started, selling alarms. We're going to have a lot to talk about. And she has a thriving social media community. I've been following her on TikTok here for a little while, of 380,000 plus followers, and she's established her own sales academy called She Sells that empowers individuals with high income skills. That's important to learn. Skills pay the bills. I always tell that to my kids. She graduated summa cum laude with a master's degree in innovative venture development. Talk a little bit about that. That's actually a degree, and I want to talk about how that's helped her from Arizona State University. And She Sells is a sales academy that bridges the male-dominated field of sales and women together, and it primarily focuses on training women and preparing them to enter the sales field in different industries. Shelby, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm very excited to be here. This is amazing.
Okay, good. I've been watching you here on TikTok the last couple of weeks. I gotta ask, like, how many reels are you doing on a daily basis with your TikTok?
Oh my gosh. So I put out 4 TikToks a day and then repurpose 1 to 2 as reels every single day.
All right, good. I like that.
Very active.
Good. We like that. That definitely helps you grow. Okay, so let's start here. Let's give everybody a bit of your background. So you graduated college with a degree in innovative venture development, which that degree, I looked it up because I'm like, interesting. I haven't heard of that before, but it basically gives you ideas takes your ideas and develops them into sustainable business opportunities, entrepreneurship, value creation. That degree, how has that helped you in your journey so far in the field of sales? Yeah,
it's funny because a lot of people think like, oh, you have a master's degree, but you don't use it. I do use it all of the time. And so essentially what it is, sounds crazy. I didn't know what it was either before I got into it. But essentially we would go in with a business idea and then they take you from zero all the way until pitching to investors on how to scale and grow this business.
Interesting.
And so a big part about it is stepping into the feet of your customers and saying, hey, like, what's their perspective on this? What are their biggest pain points? How do we pinpoint those pain points? Kind of build a business around it and make sure that our fulfillment is really good. We create loyal customers and it's a sustainable business.
So that degree would definitely help you really run any type of business. That's valid. I like that because I find that a lot of people go to school and then they're just like, I'm going to get into sales, and really their degree didn't help them at all, right? I went for behavioral science and social dynamic theory, and psychology helps you understand the mind and the brain in sales. So I see how that degree would help you structure a business. Now, you started in pest control. How did you so you're going to school. Let's talk. How did you get into selling pest control?
So My undergrad was in honors finance, and I was like, I'm going to Wall Street. I'm going to be this big finance corporate girl.
Yeah.
And I had a business mentor at the time, and he told me, hey, if you want to be like that badass saleswoman, you need to learn sales. And he sold door-to-door safes. I don't really know how that works because you can't transport them, but he did that in California, and he told me how the skill set and also the money helped him start his business that he started.
Okay.
And I heard that, and I was like, I want to be just like him, so I need to do everything that he did.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to go do door-to-door sales.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Jeremy Miner here. A lot of you guys keep asking me really good questions in the comments on how to sell more. So the easiest way to actually get a hold of me is to actually text me way faster. So 480-418-6755. So text me at 480-418-6755, because here's the deal. I started this sales training company to help you finally master sales and persuasion once and for all, which is I know what you want to do. So text me, and then let's get back to the show.
And we kind of laughed about it because he was like, I don't think like that's a thing anymore. I don't think girls even do that.
That's a big thing.
And I was like, I know. And I had no idea. So I literally Googled door-to-door sales in Arizona, found a company, recruited myself, which is unique for door-to-door. Normally they're like recruiting everybody.
Recruiting meetings, you go and there's 200 people, everybody's hired because it's straight commission.
Exactly, but nobody was really recruiting girls at the time. So I recruited myself.
Yeah.
Basically begged my manager to hire me, honestly.
Yeah.
Because he knew me from high school, and he was like, I just don't think you would like pest control. And I'm like, no, like I want to do it.
It's a very, especially door-to-door is very male dominated.
Yeah.
I started in alarm sales, and like I mean, there's probably, when I left after my last summer, there's probably like 10,000 guys, knocking for, I'd switched over to what is now known as Vivint the last year, and there's probably 10,000 plus salespeople.
All guys.
99.9% are guys.
Oh yeah, you go to the cons and all of the events, and it's just all these big frat guys in suits, and I was just there being like, oh, I wish I was with the girls, and that's kind of why I started my academy. But yeah, so I started doing door-to-door.
How did that feel though? Like, did you, like when you got in there, they're all guys. Like what's that like from your perspective? You
know what? A lot of people, I do think it's perspective, because a lot of people in my position would be like, oh, I'm the only girl.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be as good. There's a lack of training here. There's a lack of support, lack of community. Maybe I should go do something else.
Yeah.
But me, I was just so determined, honestly. And I took the other road, and I was like, I want to prove to all of these guys that girls could do even better than these guys. And so that's
what type of personality? Are you like an A-type personality, or what's your personality?
I would say I'm A-type personality for sure.
Okay, A-type personality. So you kind of have like a chip on your shoulder. Where does that come from?
Honestly, I feel like it just comes from deep down in myself. I just love proving people wrong. Yeah. And I think it's because I hate being told what to do. And honestly, I didn't tell this story yet, but my mom sat me down before I went to do door-to-door sales in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And she was like, I will give you $1,000 cash if you don't go out for the summer.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want her little 18-year-old girl going to Minnesota knocking on doors.
Most moms wouldn't.
No.
That chip on your shoulder comes from somewhere back from your childhood, because anytime you have a chip on your shoulder, it's typically from your childhood, from something happened to you, like from the age of like 5 to 13, that caused you to feel like you need to, like, as a psychologist, to like, I got to prove something to somebody. Take me back. There's always a chip on the shoulder that comes from somewhere. Nobody's born with that. You know what?
I think it might have something to do with growing up with a single mom. My mom is amazing, but she always kind of taught me, like, you have to do things yourself. You can't rely on anybody else, and you have to make do with what you have at that moment.
Yeah.
I honestly think my mom, I've never really thought about it like that.
Yeah, did you grow up like, so you're saying your mom had to do everything? Did she have to provide for you herself? So was she out like hustling all the time working? Or?
Oh yeah, so my mom's a real estate agent. So I always grew up hearing about closed deals, contracts, etc. And she would actually take me door to door and we would canvas.
Like expired listings?
Right, around the neighborhood. So maybe that kind of sparked a little interest.
Chip always comes from somewhere. Everybody has a chip. Like,
that's good.
Anybody that does anything great in their life typically does that because they have someone to prove. You could grow up like from a billionaire's family.
Right.
still have a chip on your shoulder because maybe your dad, you don't want people to feel like your mom or dad gave you everything. So you have
Right.
to prove that wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to grow up from a poor background.
Right.
Tom Brady, great chip on his shoulder. That's what he's done. So a lot of great people. And Venus Williams. Okay, so let's talk about this. So you get into pest control. How did you learn how to sell? Because I understand what the door-to-door sales game trains for selling because I went through it myself.
So the way I learned, it was kind of backwards.
Yeah.
So I signed up to do door-to-door very last minute. I didn't really get too much training before the summer. I just kind of
Nobody does.
No, nobody does.
Here's like a little manual. I still have some of the manuals here. Like my first one, it's this, then, and then you got to memorize like the door approach.
A couple really bad videos on their website.
Yeah. So what happened? How'd you really learn?
So I learned, when I first got to Minnesota, they were obviously teaching us, but what they were teaching us was the most sales bro, like frat guy version of the pitch ever.
Okay.
Very direct, you are the pest control exterminator was the sales pitch.
Okay.
The guys would dress up like they just finished spraying bugs. Yes, it's a real thing. The company EcoShield.
Yeah.
They dress up like the exterminator, and the pitch is that they just finished spraying a house.
Or
they
I'm
have
the
some
route
downtime.
Manager, I'm here in the area.
Right. If I can figure you in is dirt cheap, the most like guy version ever. So I heard that and I was like, this isn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
So I remember calling my mom and saying like, I need to rework this pitch. I need to come up with a new angle. And so I came up with a new angle that was a little bit more of like feminine as the scheduler of the company.
Okay.
That worked really well for me. So I kind of like tweaked it myself.
So so what you did, that's an example of what we call a pattern interrupt. Because, I hate to say this, like if you sell pest control and you're still saying, I'm in the area, I'm the route manager, our technicians, we can fill you in. Like the doors have heard of that. They understand what that means. Salesperson trying to sell me something. You sound like everybody else, so your prospects treat you like everybody else, and they try to get rid of you quickly. So what she's talking about is something different, like a little different angle, but it interrupts the pattern of how their brain thinks and views you and gets them to let their guard down. Do you still remember it? What you'd say right when you knock on the door?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say the whole like, so sorry to bug you, I'll be quick, just because I didn't love that.
That's horrible because that lowers your status.
Exactly. That's what every single person says, and that's your first 5 seconds.
Yeah.
You don't even have 5 seconds at the door.
Yeah.
So I would approach the door. I would use a lot of nonverbals that made me appear a little bit more busy, like I'm working.
What would you do non-verbally?
So I would wear my sunglasses on my head with my hair down, kind of very casual.
Yeah.
I would wear an Apple Watch and I would chew gum while I'm going door to door. Some people would call that disrespectful.
Sure.
I think it was smart.
Yeah.
Because while I'm pitching them, hey, nice to meet you. My name's Shelby. The reason I'm actually stopping by, I know you probably have seen, and I would kind of like press my Apple Watch.
You're getting
kind of like look at my time really quick.
Yeah.
The ants have just been crazy.
Yeah.
To be honest. I'm sure you guys use somebody though. Who'd you guys end up with? It's quick.
Yeah.
And just very like, the reason I'm here is because of the seasonal changes. This is what I know you guys are seeing. But I know you already have somebody because there's a huge need for that. So essentially, who do you use?
So that's a good disarming technique because you're already admitting, like, I already know you have somebody. Like,
Exactly.
Who do you actually already use? So you're disarming them because then they're either going to say, oh, we don't actually have anybody, or, well, we use this.
Right.
They're not saying not interested.
Exactly. And then if they say, I don't have anybody, like, oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
When did you move in? You must be new. Or
Yeah.
I haven't pitched pest control in a while. I kind of miss it.
So you're seeding doubt with that frame. We would call that framing. So same thing when I did alarms. It was like, hi, my name is blah, 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 blah. And I quickly found out after about a month, I was like, that doesn't really work that well. I'm going to have to I'm going to talk to 100 people to make a few deals. Like, I don't want to work. Yeah, numbers game. So I'm like, my brain thinks like, how do I do this much more effectively, if that makes sense? So when I would knock on the door, so I would have what do they call, like a clipboard.
Didn't you do the construction vest?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody probably does that now because of me. It's probably not a pattern up anymore, but when I was doing that 20 years ago, like,
I bet
that didn't exist. So I had like the orange vest, or I had like the neon green vest, when those came out. I had the clipboard, like the big metal clipboard with all the contracts in it. And then had like a survey on it, like literally like a survey here with like 5 questions. And so when they would come to the door, I'd be about 6 foot back, angled to the side, because you want to stay on like the probably the left-hand side,
corner.
because most people are dominant right-handed. And so I would knock on the door. I'd be kind of like looking around. They come to the door. I'd always have the pen. So I had a tonality coach that taught me how to control people with like a pen. And so I'd come to the door and be like, yeah, are you guys the homeowners here? Like I was confused and like concerned. I'd lean in and they would always be like, yeah, they always lean into, yeah, we're the homeowners. What's going on? That's an example of just a pattern interrupt.
Right.
They don't understand what's going on, you know?
Right.
And then immediately like, oh, and I apologize. I've only got a few minutes before my next appointment. Doing that to disarm them because if they feel like you're about to go,
exactly,
they're likely to be a little bit more open than if they feel like you're going to take their time.
Well, their brain also goes to, oh, he's busy. What's he busy with? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, builds your status, right? Something's going on. Just came from your neighbor, how Kathy, you know, she has the red door. She always walks like the poodle. Pattern her up because now I'm getting into focus on
You're
red door.
You're using the surroundings.
Yeah, third party terminology. That's really good. I like that. What? So you came up with this kind of thing on the side here, but who did you really learn how to sell from besides that?
To be honest, I know it's not like the answer everybody wants,
There's no
but
right or wrong answer.
I didn't learn from anybody. I really wanted to learn from somebody that was like me, and there was just nobody that was teaching what I needed to learn. And so I honestly felt like I had no true role model or somebody to look up to with that. So that's why I put so much pressure on myself going through door to door because.
Did you read any books or any training programs where you got little things here and there?
I read Door to Door Millionaire. But to be honest, our company's sales manual, the videos, I would just study them like a hawk.
Yeah.
And I would record myself on doors, voice memo it, send it to a couple people in the company, have them tweak it.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of why, like with my academy, I'm so in love with all of the girls because I know what it feels like not to have a mentor.
Somebody to train you. Okay, so you kind of learned some stuff and took some stuff that maybe you got from school and started incorporating that.
Yeah.
Okay, so door to door. So you're in door to door for 4 years. And did you sell in the summers while you went to school? Okay, so it's like summer programs. Yeah, familiar. And then what caused you to like switch gears and to get into like the high ticket industry?
To be honest, the opportunity and the longevity. So I, in my own world, I kind of feel like I maxed out the door-to-door industry. I had huge teams. I was one of the franchise owners. And I just did not like moving my whole life to a different state for 4 months out of the year. And for myself as a woman, to be honest, I was thinking, what happens when I want to start a family? Like, what is that going to look like?
Sure.
And so I was always kind of interested in doing something remote. And then after the summer, one of my old college friends, he was doing something called remote high ticket closing. And I remember thinking, like, this guy is the least salesy person ever. Not somebody that I would ever think would do good in sales. And so I was asking him about it. How are you making this money? What is it like? What do you mean you're taking warm inbound cold leads in your house? And he was like, just listen to a couple calls. Listen to it. And I was like, this is the best opportunity.
What was he selling?
He was selling a college prep program.
Interesting. Yeah, there's so many like high tickets. It could be dating. I got a bunch of
fitness
influencers that are dater and coaches and fitness and how to get better teeth. I mean, it's like anything. You know, how to write a book coach. You know, how to get published coach. How to do lighting for a podcast coach.
There's pretty much something for everybody nowadays.
Yeah. So you got in, and then what did you as your first remote closing job? Like, what were you selling?
I was selling that college prep program.
Oh, okay, that's what you got.
So I did that for a while, and then I just remember being like, this is the best opportunity. And I remember asking around, and there were really no women that I could connect with in the industry. So I was like, I'm going to just lead the charge for women in remote closing.
Yeah, what caused you to want to do that?
Honestly, in my last sales opportunity, the door-to-door, I was one of the only girls. And I remember sitting in the rooms where they would do all of the award ceremonies. The guys are going crazy, throwing water bottles and chairs. And I remember sitting there, and I would make a joke about it to the girls on my team. And I would say, we're in Ken World, like Ken World, Barbie Land. And I would tell them one day I'm going to make Barbie Land. And so
this is your opportunity to make Barbie Land. I like that.
Exactly.
So what, I don't know what the stats are. What is 73% of the sales force globally is men, 27%. It varies based on models. It's about 75-25. So you're trying to change that, is what you're saying.
100%.
All right. A go-getter.
Huge opportunity, yes.
Okay, so you get into high ticket. You now have a company called She Sells. I like that, Brad.
Thank
Where
you.
where did you come up with that name? That's innovative.
It was actually my mom.
Mm.
So she came up with it while I was doing door-to-door. She always wanted me to start my own sales academy.
Mhm.
And that was a dream of mine for a very long time.
Mhm.
And I remember when I was in my master's program,
Yeah.
I was just, professor was talking about something and I was Googling on the LLC websites.
Mhm.
And I was like, I wonder if it's available.
Yeah.
And so I actually got the LLC like 2 years ago
Yeah.
before I launched it just because it was available.
Interesting.
So it kind of like manifested itself.
Yeah, I like that because we have they're in Australia. We have a client that they're a sales training company too, and they sometimes it's interesting because a lot of sales training companies hire us to train them how to sell sales training.
Yeah, right?
But their company's called She Sells, but they're in Australia, so I really like that
Nice.
brand. What does your company specialize in besides training women how to sell? Like, let's talk about kind of what you do with
Yeah.
placement and stuff.
So obviously sales training for women's kind of like the big thing, but with the launch of my remote program, we're really focusing on training these women on how to run a successful sales call for remote high ticket closing.
Okay.
So most sales programs, I'm sure you know, it's just like video modules and like peace out, hope you learn a lot.
Sure.
But for my academy, I really truly want every woman to be set up for success.
Mhm.
So what we did was we took the full call and I broke the full call into thirds.
Sure.
And I say for 3 weeks, we're training just on the first 15 minutes of the call. You test just on the first 15 minutes of the call. Then we move on to the second. You
Okay.
test, mock role play. And then you have to sell a full call to one of our coaches
I like that. Yeah.
before you're certified and then
Okay.
before you're allowed
So you
to
have like a
placed.
virtual training course, and then you have like group training calls on Zoom where you kind of teach the nuances because can't teach all that.
No.
We have like our main course is a 51-hour virtual training portal, but you can't. I mean, if I put everything there, it'd be like 17,000
Exactly.
hours. It doesn't make any sense. You can't teach all the nuances to all the different industries. So you have to have group trainers. How are you training your trainers?
That's one of my favorite questions. So
Yeah.
I've been training trainers for a long time and it's my favorite because you're training them on your framework, but you're also training them on how to train. And it's different because you have to teach them, the balance between giving corrections but also keeping their confidence. Because the new sales reps, they need a lot of confidence at first,
Sure.
even when they suck,
Yeah.
in order to like become a really good sales rep. So
Yeah.
I love training the trainers. It's
Yeah,
really
we
fun.
call that constructive feedback. So when we always tell clients in our like top tier programs, and I'm not talking about companies, but more individual salespeople that, you didn't come to us, you didn't hire us to be your friends. You hired us to get you results. Now, after we get your results, we can become friends at that point. But we're going to give you feedback that's constructive, show you what you're doing well, but also show you what you need to tweak so you can do amazing. So train the trainer, that's good. Okay, so been watching you on some of your reels. You talk a lot about gap selling, which we're very big on. In your mind, what does that mean and why is it so important?
To me, gap selling, if I had to put it in like one sentence, it would be to internally motivate the other person to change. And so you essentially can't tell somebody that they have a problem. They just don't believe you because you're obviously trying to sell them something.
Yeah, you're biased. You're a salesperson.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they need to speak the words and verbalize that they're here right now. It's painful and it's painful because of this. And they want to be here. And you need them to actually verbalize that there's a difference between that. And when they say the words, they believe it rather than you actually telling them.
It's self-persuasion. And behavioral science, the highest form of persuasion is getting a human being to persuade themselves. So
100%.
it's like a psychologist that you pay $1,000 an hour instead of a psychologist you pay $150 an hour. The biggest difference is the $150 hour will tell you what your problems are, will tell you what you need to do, but that goes in one ear out the other with people because they don't internalize it.
Right.
They're externally motivated. You're not internally motivated. So what you're talking about is getting them to basically sell and persuade themselves.
Exactly.
Where they come up with their own ideas that they need to change themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They need to understand that if they don't change, there's more risk in that than them making whatever small investment that is in order
the consequences.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So, we call that an NEPQ comparative frame. So like, which is more risky for you? Is it more risky for you to get the funding together and you learn how to XYZ result, or is it more risky for you to do nothing at all and the problems stay the same and nothing ever changes in reality?
Exactly.
Which is more risky,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do you feel about tonality in sales?
Tonality is everything,
Yeah.
obviously. So in sales, I always tell my girls, everybody says the same stuff. No
Mhm.
matter what industry you're in, we all have the same script. There's no magic way to overcome an objection that closes some deal. But it's how you say it, and it's your energy, and it's, having a well-placed pause in something that's very important, or
Sure.
slowing down, speeding up, measuring your cadence. So it truly is everything.
What do you feel are because there's different tonalities that you have to really master if you want to become like a top 1% salesperson. For you, what are the most important tonalities that you've learned, and how does that affect your prospects?
I love using confused and surprised tonality. I think those are really good, especially when the prospect says something that you want them to kind of justify themselves. So if somebody says, I've never looked into a program like this before, or even pest control example, I've never hired anyone before. Really? Why? How long have you been in the home? So it's like, you want them to kind of double down on what they're saying, and almost
like
switch them.
You haven't? What's held you back from doing that?
Right.
Like you're confused, right? Now, it's interesting what you just did there. So I want everybody to see what she did. Her facial expressions actually went down like this, and her brow went like this. That's a confused tone, because your facial expressions are the remote control to your tone. Try having a confused tone with a straight face. Like, that's going to be really hard for you. That's what they teach you in acting school, right? So the greatest actors and actresses, they're taught that your facial expressions control your audience, right? Your body language, your tone, right? Like, who's your favorite actress or actor?
Probably Jennifer Lawrence. I think she's funny.
Yeah, the Arrow lady. What's the show?
She's great in interviews.
The Mockingbird and all that stuff. Yeah. So imagine watching that show if she just talked like this the entire time, and she's like, we have to go to the city because the District 8 is having a lot of people that are killed, and we have to really save them. And if we don't save them, then we won't be able to eat dinner tonight. And then after dinner, like, we could be next. You'd be like turning it off, because there's no emotion triggered.
You're not drawn in.
So, emotion, everybody says, people buy on emotion, not logic. That's true, but I don't think people understand what that really means. What that really means is, like, how do you trigger? Like, we've heard that in books, but like, how do you do that?
Exactly.
Because you can't, as you know, you can't just ask emotional questions and the prospect's like, oh, I'm so glad you asked that emotional question.
To make them
because they know what you're trying to do. Yeah, you have to get them to let their guard down. What are some disarming techniques that maybe you teach to help people learn how to do that?
Some disarming techniques. So with me teaching women, a lot of the times they always ask, how do I disarm alpha male men? That's like the biggest question I get.
Yeah.
And so with that, what I teach them to do is, because a lot of men don't want to open up emotionally to a woman like right off the bat.
Yeah.
And so one that I would always use that I teach the girls is to wrap them up with somebody else, another male that was in a similar situation. So, so I was just talking to Steve, kind of similar situation. He was dealing with X, Y, and Z. He was trying to get to X, Y, and Z. He felt that, when he went through that, he kind of felt a little, named some emotions. Is that pretty similar to you, or like, what do you feel in that moment? And that way he kind of feels, that another man opened up to me before about some deeper emotions. And then it's kind of easy with his psychology of, did you feel the same, or like, take me through that?
Yeah.
It allows them to kind of make it a little bit easier
Cause
to
them
open
to
up.
feel a little bit safer.
Right.
A really good disarming technique, especially with alpha males, really for anybody, is to use a playful tone.
Right.
To really get them to open up. So if let's say you're in remote closing, because we that's a big industry we train in as well, and the prospect gets on Zoom and they immediately say, well, how are you?
Right.
What would most salespeople say?
Good, how are
I'm
you?
doing good, how are you?
Yeah.
And that doesn't hurt you, but it doesn't really help you.
It doesn't.
Right. So, but if you lean and be like, oh, just hanging out, being boring. What about you? Or just like, trying to stay out of trouble. Are you getting in trouble over there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I'm not getting in trouble. Just a playful tone.
Mm-hmm.
But now, imagine if I did it this way. How you doing, Jeremy? Oh, just hanging out, being boring over here. How about you?
They'd be like, wow.
You are boring, right?
Yeah.
But the tone shifts the brain. So that playful tone scientifically releases dopamine in your brain, for anybody, even an A-type, causes them to relax, laugh, and open up. It's just a disarming technique.
100%.
So really good stuff. Okay, so gap selling from where they are to where they want to be. We call that their, their current situation, their current state to their objective state is what you're talking about. Now, you talk a lot about 7 different types of, before we go into the 7 different types of closing, in your mind, where does the prospect decide to buy?
In the first 5-10 minutes.
Why is that?
Because this is where they truly verbalize their problem and their issue and their pain points. And so if you don't draw out this person's pain points, you have no chance of selling them on whatever you're selling. And so with my Women in the Sales Academy, we just wrapped up week 3, which was the first third of the call.
Yeah.
And the whole time we were training on this, I was telling the women, if you don't do tier 1 right, the pitch, the closing, the objections, they don't matter. You'll be digging yourself out of every single hole.
Yeah, because the prospect's guards up the entire time, so they never will emotionally open up. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why disarming techniques are so important that you guys have to learn, because a lot of salespeople genuinely believe, and it's not your fault that you were taught that, because we're all taught that, but it is your what? It is your problem, right? Nobody's coming to save you. You have to learn these skills. A lot of salespeople are taught most that you at the close, that's when they decide to buy. That is not when they decide to buy. They don't decide to buy, do you want the red one or the blue one? Oh, I want the blue one. Well,
here's my credit card.
Yeah, that's not when they decide to buy. If they say, I want the blue one, option close, that means they had already decided to buy from the conversation. Because then you'll have people like, well, I don't know if I need any of those. Maybe I need to think about it. So you're right. A lot of salespeople think it's the close, but the close is just kind of like the logical next step to get the problem solved and to pay. It's really in the body of the conversation that gets into emotional open up and relive their pain.
Exactly.
I always say that the 2 biggest emotional drivers that causes a human being to want to change is pain and the fear of future pain. So like you said, with some of those techniques, if you can't help the prospect relive their pain of their current situation and their past history, they feel no need to change. And if they feel no need to change, that's why you get a lot of objections. That's why they don't buy.
And it's not just in remote high ticket closing, it's every single industry too. Before I even knew what that was in door-to-door, I was having them relive their pain. I would knock on somebody's door and they're telling me, we don't get much, maybe just 1 wasp or so. Okay, was that outside or inside? I mean, 1 will get in every once in a while. They're inside?
Oh, they're inside
and
your
they're
house?
And they're like, I mean, but I just trapped it and it was nothing. So did you put on a whole hazmat suit, with the cup? Take me, what happened? They're like, I mean, I had to get the swatter and it was crazy and blah, blah, blah. My son's allergic, so he was freaking out. Your son was allergic.
What would have happened if he got stung?
Where do you think they're getting in? Do you think the hole is closed? And then that's how you maximize the pain of
You're seeding doubt, because a lot of salespeople in that space would have been like, oh, they only have 1 wasp, and they would have just went on.
That's not worth $1,000 for pest control.
Yeah, but you're getting them to relive a situation where they had to go do all that, where they might have been afraid of their son. And you're seeding doubt with using your tone. That's a concern tone, a tone that shows empathy. That's good. We'll talk about, what are your thoughts about closing?
Closing?
Just in general, what are your, different sales trainers have different thoughts about what closing is and isn't it? What are your thoughts?
So I guess in a broad sense, what comes to mind is that closing isn't just one close that you say at the end of the sales pitch.
Sure.
You don't just end your sales pitch and you're like, yep, and the investment's going to be $1,000, debit or credit. No.
Yeah.
I soft close a lot throughout the sales pitch, just to get the buyer picturing themselves buying and putting them in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
That way, when you layer the closes a certain way, it doesn't feel too unnatural when you go into closing.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny because a lot of new sales reps, I'm sure you can relate, they think a really amazing sale looks like 20 different objections on the back end. And it
that's,
doesn't.
That's if you don't know how to sell.
Exactly.
You know how to sell, you prevent most objections from happening in their mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I like to do it, is manipulating the sale a lot in the beginning, and then closing throughout so that by the end they're pretty much like
Yes, you're
ready.
talking about pre-framing. So pre-framing allows the prospect to kind of eliminate objections before they happen, right? So like a spouse objection. So if you're in the remote high ticket space, you're going to have the spouse objection. Now, depending on how you frame that throughout the conversation will depend on if that spouse objection happens a lot or very rarely.
Exactly.
And if it does happen here and there because you framed it so well, it's really easy for you to help them overcome it.
Exactly. I just did a training on that last night with my girls. I call it shutting doors. I always call my sales technique something funny because I think it like resonates with them a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so I tell them, you have to shut all of the doors before you even get into the sales pitch. The spouse, process, priority, reassurance, whatever it is. And for the spouse one, it's one of my favorite ones, especially if you're selling to women.
Yeah.
You can see if they have a wedding ring on.
Yeah.
You can build some good rapport. Oh my gosh, your wedding ring's so beautiful. He did so well. Does your husband know you're on the call?
Yeah.
And then kind of like address what might be an issue now. And then I think it was you actually who did a video where you were like, and then you compliment them like, oh, it seems like you guys have a great relationship and he's very supportive. And then kind of moving on from that because it makes her feel like, oh,
it's a little bit of a frame.
Yeah.
So it's about frame like, oh, how does your now you can be playful here, like, now does your spouse know you're on this call, or are you on like a secret mission? You're like, they're like, oh no, he knows I'm on the call. How does your spouse feel about you? And then you can either repeat back the problem they have. So let's say, give me an example of a remote control
fitness offer.
So how did your spouse feel about the kind of the weight that you had to kind of it put on after you had a couple kids? I mean, how does he feel about that? Now, if you're talking to a female, you got to be really like concerned tone, like very empathy there. You can't be like, how did your spouse feel about the weight you put on? Because they're going to be like, who the hell is this guy?
She'd be like, end the Zoom call.
End the Zoom call. So if you're like, how did your spouse feel about some of the weight gain you mentioned you had because of the kids? Like very politely, right? Oh, he doesn't like it. Does he want you to lose that weight, or how does he feel about that? And so when you're pre-framing it that way, it's hard for them to be like, oh yeah, he definitely wants me to lose weight. He wants me to do this. He wants me to solve this. It's hard for them to be then like, well, I need to talk to him about it. It's just pre-framing. That's good. Okay, let's see. What are some good, let's go in a different direction. What are some good tips? Because a lot of people ask us for tips when they interview for a new sales job. How can they perform well? They're competing with a lot of people for the same sales position or whatever. What are some good tips you might give them?
In a sales interview?
Yeah.
You have to close the deal.
Yeah.
Especially if you're interviewing for a sales position. That's your very first deal that you're going to close is yourself. And so I always teach my girls when they're going to be interviewing for these positions, you got to close the deal and treat it all like a sale. One way they could do this, and you guys watching could do it too, is at the end of the interview, you always get asked, do you have any other questions before we wrap up? You say, yeah, I do. I mean, we've only been talking for like 30, maybe 45 minutes. It's not really too much time in order to get to know me. You just can't. So I guess, do you have any reservations about moving me on to the next level? And if so, what are they, so that we can address them now? And then, maybe they'll say, well, you're really experienced. And if I'm being honest, you being 23 years old, you just might not be old enough or mature enough in order to move you on to the next level. And then there you go. You treat it like an objection. I figured you would say that. I've been hearing that a lot. But what most companies don't realize is that, being younger is actually a great thing. I bring a positive energy. I'm malleable, etc.
Yeah. And I that's good. The other thing I would, it's just me, I would tweak it and I would say, instead of saying, do you, I would say, what reservations do you possibly have that would prevent us from doing something? That's good. I like that. And then one thing that we teach salespeople very early on is like, okay, so let's say that I came to work with you guys. What would my training and development really look like, once I got into this company? Because training and development is really important to me.
For sure.
That's important for an employer. When an employee says that training and development is really important to me as an employee, employers perk up. It's like, wow, this person wants to get better. They want to learn. They want to be successful, because a lot of people don't ask that type of question, but what you're doing is you're seeding into the employer's mind that you want to be successful for
You're
the
hungry.
company. You're hungry. And
Yeah.
like most companies want hungry individuals because
Exactly.
there's a lot of people out there that just aren't very hungry.
And all sales positions, they don't care where you went to college. They don't
Yeah.
care who your dad is, really how old you are. Like, they don't care about
They
that.
don't
They
care.
only care
Yeah.
about your energy, your
I don't
motivation,
care if
your
your hair's
drive.
purple, if you've got 7 arms, 2 legs,
But
know,
if you
3
can
noses.
sell
If
and
you
you
can
wanna sell-
communicate, you're getting all the perks. That's what I like about sales. It's all based on production.
For sure.
No politics at all. Okay, you talk about question-based selling. Why is that so important to ask questions that will open up the prospect emotionally rather than just surface level questions?
Well, if you ask surface level questions, you're just going to get surface level answers. And you're not going to sell anybody if they only go so far with you on their
Yeah.
pain points.
Yeah.
So it really is in
Mhm.
all asking the right questions at the right time, maybe layering a couple of the questions
Yeah.
in order to get someone to feel comfortable opening up to you.
Mhm.
Because if they don't feel like them and you are on the same page about the pain point, you're
Yeah.
not going to be on the same page about the solution.
Yeah.
So yeah, all it comes down to the
Yeah,
questions.
you have to give them the milk before you give them the meat, right? So you can't.
I like
you,
that.
You can't. You can't, like, one of your first questions can't be like, this XYZ problem, how's it affecting you personally? You can't ask that in like the first 2 minutes because it's too much meat.
Right.
You got to give them the milk. So you got to ask questions in the beginning that are easier for them to answer, but then start to expand and trust you more, and then you can open them up more emotionally, right? So I see, a lot of salespeople and companies when they come to us, and you'd be surprised. We got a couple of Fortune 100 clients that are big clients of ours, and I'm like, how are you guys doing these numbers? Like, numbers game for sure, But they'll ask like a surface level question, like, can you tell us, some challenges you're having in your business? And I'm just like, your prospect knows
Exactly.
that question. They know what you're trying to get out from them.
Right.
So instead, I might relanguage it and be like, so you've been with XYZ vendor for the last 3 years. I mean, what's caused you to feel like you might want to look at someone else?
Yeah, it looks like it's going pretty well, not too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, why take an hour out of your day in order to hop on a call? Like, what made you
What's caused
motivated?
you to feel like you might want to look at this?
They're a great company. Why would you want to change it?
Yeah. So it causes them to, like, you see, you're reversing that question of what are some challenges you have, because your prospects know where that goes, to then we're re-engineering that question, reframing it, where now we're getting them to defend themselves on why they want to change.
And why they took an hour of your time out, which I think is huge. You want them to always be selling themselves.
Yeah. It's about building your status in their mind, because, as you know, how are salespeople viewed in society at large? Lower status.
Ants.
Which, I always, when I'm doing a keynote or something for an organization, I'm just like, how many of you go into a doctor's office? The doctor asks you 3 or 4 questions, and they're like, okay, all right, time for the exam. Take off your clothes, put on the gown. And what do you say? Yes, doctor. You don't be like, I need to think about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you view the doctor at a much higher status already, right? Just because they've got that degree up there. So salespeople, unless you change the way you communicate, you always be viewed as like a low status salesperson they're trying to convince you to buy their thing. Whereas you want to reverse engineer that, where you get the prospect to qualify to you, because after all, who has the problems, the prospect or the salesperson? Prospect. Who has the solution?
Me.
Salesperson. So why would you be qualifying to the prospect when you're not the one that has the problems? Now, that doesn't mean you're a weirdo and, like, well, at the end of this call, see if you're a good fit for us. And then, like, people don't believe that. Like, you don't want to position it doesn't work very
They know they'll be a good fit if they're willing
They know if, like, I'm ready to pay. Nope, you're not a good fit for us. I can't take your credit card. Like, nobody believes that. I've even had salespeople trying to use that on me, like, a while ago. I'm just like, oh my God, that's like so bad. It's so bad. Okay, that's good. Okay, so what are your thoughts about, about just body language? Let's talk about body language. I mean, you sold door to door. Body language is very key, even on Zoom. Let's talk about body language on Zoom. Why is body language, even selling virtually, so important?
There's so many differences between, like, selling in person and selling over Zoom that I've kind of had to, like, pull what I like from in person and kind of create some of my own for Zoom. Body language is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
In person, you can obviously do things like break the touch barrier when it's like appropriate.
Sure.
Move them is a
Mhm.
big one.
Mhm.
I'm sure you know in door to door, you're always like moving your
You're always
prospects out
moving.
of the no zone.
Yeah. Do you want me to look at that? Like you kind of motion to the door and they're like, yeah, come in. You know, it's just
Yeah.
like a little.
Well,
little
mine was
step.
like, you know, when they're stuck or when
Yeah.
you just feel like you get at least 1 to 2 no's in a row, that person feels like their surroundings are tied to that no.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to get a yes after a no when they're wearing the same shirt, it's hot outside, they're in the door frame, so you have to move them.
Yeah.
And it was the biggest thing that I used in door to door. And so it's funny you bring it up because in remote closing, I remember being like, how can I move this person
Yeah.
when they're, you know, tied to a Zoom?
Yeah.
And so I did come up with something that I teach all the girls. It's pretty fun.
Let's hear it.
So whenever you feel like you're stuck on a Zoom call, instead of being able to in person be like, honestly, let me just show you and moving, what you can do is you can kind of cut the conversation in a creative way. One you can do is to get water. Honestly, I never do this, but I am so thirsty right now. I'm gonna go fill up my water really quick. I'm gonna turn my camera off. You can do the same, feel free. Don't ask, just do it. Turn your camera off. You leave for like 45 seconds maybe. You can get water or not, whatever.
Yeah.
But what's gonna happen is the prospect is maybe they don't get up out of their chair, but they're gonna pull their phone out. They're gonna scroll on something, text somebody back. Their brain is going to reframe a little bit and reset.
Okay.
And then you come back on the Zoom call and you hit them with just like, so sorry, like maybe not so sorry, but I would just be like, thank you so much. Where were we?
Yeah.
And when you say like, where were we? The prospect will blurt out.
Let them tell you where. Okay, that's good.
It'll have them tell you what the first reflex was on their mind. And then now you know what they were actually thinking and why they were saying no.
I like that.
Kind of like a good reset for Zoom.
That's a good reset frame. And then you can also like, you can even kind of make them laugh like, oh, hold on, I'm really thirsty. Like, are you gonna upset at me if I go get a drink of water?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't get upset with you. You use that little playful tone. Like, hold on, are you gonna be angry at me if I go get some water? No, Jeremy, I'm not gonna be angry at you. I used to do it all the time when I'd start to walk into the door. They're like, yeah, sure, come in to see where the alarm's at. I'm like, no, hold on. Are you gonna be angry at me if I don't take off my shoes?
Yeah.
No, we're not gonna be angry. Or I'd be like, are you gonna be, you know, because there's some homes that I can't even help. Are you going to be upset at me if I can't do anything for you? No, we would never get upset at you. Just those little frames cause them to let their guard down, but cause them to like pull you in.
Right.
No, I'm not going to get upset if you can't help me.
Yeah, it's all push and pull.
It's all push and pull. I love that. Now last couple questions, you talk about there's a difference between how men sell compared to women. Tell us a few pointers.
So there's obviously a lot going through my head. I think there's two main things, differences. Number one is obviously men get way less time at the door, time on the phone, because they sound like every other salesperson.
Sure.
But they do get some sort of elevated credibility without having to prove themselves as much. Women, on the other hand, we get a lot more time. Maybe people are worried about hurting our feelings, wanting to be nice, or maybe they're just confused on what we're doing. So it's good to have that time, but we need to be really good at establishing credibility frequently throughout the sales pitch, or else you have no chance at closing them if they don't respect you.
You have to build status much quicker, otherwise they're just gonna like not take you as seriously as like somebody that can solve their problems and get them the results.
Like the expert, like the doctor you're saying, for sure. So there's that, but then there's also a huge pain point that I see with women right now selling, because that's my main audience. They think that you can be 100% in your feminine energy the whole time, the whole career of sales.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
So in your feminine energy means you're receiving, you're more emotional, you're more helping, you're letting opportunities come to you because you're so high status, which I agree with.
Some truth to that, but not the whole thing.
Some truth. When you're in the sale, I think it's really good to dive deep into your feminine energy and be the helper, ask good questions, get emotional. But you cannot be anywhere near your feminine energy during the follow-up process, the prospecting process, and like the hard work.
Because they're going to put you in the friend zone. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
You're like the coach. You're like the coach. I'm coaching but it's like free consulting. You're not
Yeah.
really solving any problems. You don't solve problems until they buy. So if you can't
Exactly.
get the prospect to buy, you don't solve problems.
Yeah, well, that and even just like your work ethic. Like when I was doing door to door, I wouldn't take a lunch. I would just go straight 10 hours knocking doors the whole time. And that's not very feminine girly of me, but that's what you have to do.
Sure.
And then when somebody does answer the door and you start having that conversation, you're obviously cool, calm, collected, asking really good questions.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
good.
balance.
You know, one advantage that women have over men is that naturally your DNA, your whole mindset, the way your brain works is you have far more empathy than a male. So like when we teach a guy, or like let's say some guys in a company how to sell, we have to teach them in certain contexts with certain questions to like soften their voice and ask it in a concerned tone, a tone that shows empathy. That is a hard tone for men to master. They have to really practice that. Now with women, it's kind of already built in.
Easy.
So it's easy for you to master that. You know, so if somebody isn't moving forward, they're procrastinating, you've had several calls with them, it all depends on your industry. And they're always like telling you they're going to move forward, but then they never do. Joan, can I ask you something? Yeah, and this is off the record. I'm not going to go post it on your IG, but what's really holding you back? What's really holding you back from moving forward? It's just that soft, concerned tone. And for
I
women,
like that.
really easy for them to do.
I like to build a couple of yeses before pulling that one out.
Sure.
To where it's like, you know, this is something, kind of pull back a little bit, like, this is something you do want to do though, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Is it something that you truly think can help you get to that whatever mark? Okay, so if you really want to do it, you think now's a great time to do it, and you think that it can help you, what else is coming up?
What's really holding you back?
Right. So I like them to give me a couple yeses.
That's like last case scenario. Like that's after you've done everything, nothing has worked. That's like the last the last arrow you're pulling out of the
you
quiver.
don't touch that with
that's the very last one. So good. Well, Shelby, great to have you on the show. Congratulations on your new company and the remote space and controlling that. Where can they go learn more about what you do as far as remote closing and those type of things?
Yeah, so my academy is on waitlist right now. We don't have enrollment open for a long period of time. We do it in intervals with cohorts as of now. So right now you can go to my Instagram at Shelby.Sapp or my TikTok Diary of a Door-to-Door Saleswoman. That might be changing soon. Or you can go to my waitlist. Or you can go to my waitlist and be the first people to hear when we do open the doors for She Sells Remote for the second cohort, and that will be linked below.
Okay, perfect. All right, that's it, everybody. Love you. You listen to what Shelby just said. You know, if you're especially in a remote space and you're looking for some placement, some opportunities, get on that wait list. See what she's got to offer. I've been following her for a little bit on TikTok. I even had one of my daughters tell me that they were following her, and one of my daughters' name is Shelby.
Love that.
Ironic. There you go. All right, everybody. Love you. And then make sure you go to barnesandnoble.com as well. Get our Barnes & Noble bestseller, our Wall Street Journal bestseller, The New Model of Selling to an Unsellable Generation. Good start with sales. Follow Shelby. We'll put all that in the notes. We will see you next